The celebration deferred. The air inside the silver spoon buzzed with an electric energy, filled with the sounds of clinking glasses and soft laughter. As Dr. Ethan Carter entered, he was enveloped by the warm glow of candlelight and the rich aroma of Cajun spices wafting through the air. It had been a long, grueling 12-hour shift at Charity Hospital, but he had finally carved out a moment for himself, a moment to celebrate his recent achievements, the culmination of years of relentless dedication and hard work. Ethan paused for a moment, absorbing the atmosphere. The restaurant's opulence struck him. Glistening chandeliers hanging from the high ceilings, their crystals shimmering like stars against the backdrop of deep mahogany wood. This was a world apart from the sterile, often thankless environment of the hospital. Here, he could finally exhale. Dressed in a tailored navy suit that complemented his tall frame, Ethan straightened his tie, a symbolic gesture that mirrored his sense of accomplishment. As one of the few black surgeons in New Orleans, he had fought tooth and nail to carve out his place in the medical field, battling both personal and systemic challenges. This dinner was more than just a meal. It was a celebration of resilience and triumph. As he approached the hostess stand, the smile on his face was met with a cool, almost dismissive tone. "Good evening, sir. Do you have a reservation?" The hostess's eyes barely met his, focused instead on the clipboard in her hands. "Ethan Carter. I'm here for a celebratory dinner," he replied, a hint of pride lacing his words. The evening held the promise of joy, and he wanted to share it with the world. Her demeanor shifted instantly. "I'm sorry, but the restaurant is fully reserved for the evening. Perhaps you'd like to try another time." Her voice had a chilly finality, as if she had already dismissed him before he could even process her words. Ethan felt a heat rise in his cheeks, a wave of humiliation crashing over him. "I don't understand. I just finished an important shift at the hospital. I thought." His words trailed off, leaden with disbelief. He had envisioned a celebratory evening, a recognition of his efforts, a moment to feel acknowledged. "Reservations are firm, sir," she interjected, her gaze shifting to the next guest waiting behind him. It was a well-dressed couple who exchanged glances filled with curiosity and judgment. Realizing further protest would be futile, Ethan stepped back, the weight of indignation settling heavily on his shoulders. As he exited the restaurant, the world outside felt colder. The vibrant streets of New Orleans, usually alive with jazz and laughter, seemed muted and dull in contrast to the warmth he had just been denied. He could hear distant notes of music, but it did little to lift his spirits. Outside the entrance, he spotted his sister Jade, her striking presence cutting through the chaos of his thoughts. She was a whirlwind of determination and empathy, her eyes instantly narrowing with concern as she approached him. "Ethan, what happened?" she asked, her brow furrowing deeply. "I was just turned away," he replied, frustration dripping from his voice. "They said they're fully booked. Can you believe it? After everything I've worked for, I can't even get a table in a restaurant." Jade crossed her arms, her expression shifting from concern to fierce determination. "You know this isn't just about a table, right? It's about more than that. You're a surgeon, for crying out loud. You have a voice, a platform. You need to use it." Ethan sighed, exhaustion creeping into his tone. "I'm not looking for a fight, Jade. I just want to focus on my career. I can't go chasing after every slight." "Doesn't help anyone," she shot back, her voice rising. "You're in a position of power. You have the chance to make a difference, and you're willing to let it slip away because it's uncomfortable." A storm brewed within him. "I just want to be a doctor," he said, the weight of the conversation pressing heavily on his chest. "Is that so wrong?" "No," Jade softened her tone, taking a step closer. "But being a doctor in a system that actively works against you means you have to fight harder. You can't let them push you down. You're more than just a surgeon. You're a role model." Silence enveloped them, the sounds of the city fading into the background. Ethan felt the clash of ambition and responsibility within him, a turbulent mix swirling like the jazz rhythms that pulsated through the streets of New Orleans. The night was still young, but for him, the battle had only just begun. Determined to process the evening's events, Ethan walked the sterile halls of Charity Hospital, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead and casting a stark glow on the white walls. Despite the exhaustion etched into his features, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. The earlier humiliation at the Silver Spoon still lingered in his mind, but he pushed it aside, focusing instead on the patients waiting for him. As he entered the surgical wing, he was greeted by the familiar sounds of medical equipment and the low murmur of staff in conversation. Here, he was in his element, surrounded by colleagues who respected his expertise. But even within these walls, the sting of exclusion from the restaurant echoed in his mind, serving as a stark reminder of the systemic barriers still present in society. Ethan's first patient of the evening, a young boy with a congenital heart defect, needed an urgent procedure. As he scrubbed in, his mind drifted back to his earlier conversation with Jade. She was right. Being a surgeon meant he had a responsibility beyond the operating room. He had the opportunity to stand up against the inequities that plagued his community. The procedure was tense but successful, a moment of triumph that brought a smile to Ethan's face. He often found solace in the moments he could help his patients, but as he completed the surgery, he couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper needed to change. After finishing the procedure, he sat in the doctor's lounge, reflecting on his life and career. The walls around him felt stifling, not just due to the fluorescent lights, but because of the weight of expectation and responsibility. He could hear the muffled laughter of his colleagues, who were perhaps unaware of the burden he carried. It was a burden of representation, of being one of the few black surgeons in a field dominated by individuals who didn't share his experiences. He picked up his phone, scrolling through social media. His feed was filled with images of successful professionals, celebrations, and milestone achievements. It felt both inspiring and alienating. He paused at a post that highlighted systemic racism in healthcare, igniting a fire in him. The post reminded him that the fight for equality didn't end in the operating room. It extended to every facet of society, including places like the Silver Spoon. As he left the hospital that night, he resolved to channel his experiences into something meaningful. Maybe he could use his voice not just for himself, but for those who felt unheard and unrepresented. He needed to confront the discomfort, embrace the challenge, and turn his indignation into action. The following morning, he gathered with his colleagues for the daily briefing. As they discussed their patients, he found himself speaking up more than usual, sharing insights about the need for diversity in medical practices and the importance of making healthcare accessible for all. Ethan's voice gained momentum, fueled by the memory of his sister's encouragement. He spoke passionately, and to his surprise, he felt a shift in the room. His colleagues began to engage, asking questions, sharing their perspectives. What had once felt like a battle he fought alone now felt like the beginning of a movement. By the end of the briefing, the atmosphere had transformed. What started as a standard meeting turned into an impromptu discussion on how they could collectively address the issues of inequality in healthcare. Ethan had ignited something, a spark that he hoped would lead to meaningful change. As he walked out of the hospital that day, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. He was ready to confront not only the biases he faced personally, but also the systemic injustices that hindered progress. The journey ahead would be challenging, but he was no longer alone. Armed with the support of his colleagues and the unwavering belief of his sister, Ethan was ready to take a stand. This was not just about a dinner table anymore. It was about creating a seat for everyone at the table. Seeds of change. The morning sun bathed New Orleans in a golden light, illuminating the bustling streets and casting long shadows behind the wrought iron balconies that adorned the historic buildings. Ethan felt the warmth on his skin as he stepped out of his car, a sense of determination pulsing through him. The echoes of the previous night's humiliation still lingered, but rather than weigh him down, they propelled him forward. He was ready to make a difference, not just in his own life, but in the lives of others. Arriving at Charity Hospital, he was greeted by the familiar sights and sounds of the bustling emergency room. The atmosphere was a mixture of urgency and camaraderie, with medical staff moving swiftly, attending to patients with care and precision. As he donned his scrubs, he felt the familiar rush of purpose surge through him. He was a surgeon, but today, he would also be a voice for change. The day unfolded with a series of challenging cases that tested his skills and resolve. In the operating room, Ethan's focus was unwavering. He navigated through intricate procedures with the expertise that came from years of hard work and sacrifice. But with each successful surgery, the deeper calling of advocacy tugged at his heartstrings. He knew that his journey was about more than just the scalpel. It was about breaking down barriers and fostering a more inclusive environment within the medical field. During lunch, Ethan gathered with a few colleagues in the hospital cafeteria. The usual banter filled the air, but the conversation quickly turned to the increasing pressure to address systemic issues in healthcare. "I've seen so many patients from underrepresented backgrounds who just don't get the same level of care," one of his colleagues, Dr. Malik, commented, his brow furrowed with concern. "It's like there's an invisible line that keeps them out of access." Ethan leaned in, feeling the conversation align with the thoughts that had been swirling in his mind. "We can't let this keep happening. If we don't take a stand, who will? We have to advocate for equitable care, not just for our patients, but for the next generation of medical professionals." The group nodded, their expressions shifting from casual to serious. They understood the implications of Ethan's words. A few began to share their experiences of biases they had witnessed, both in treatment and in hiring practices. They discussed the importance of mentorship programs for aspiring medical students from marginalized communities, recognizing that creating opportunities was essential for lasting change. "I think we need to do more than just talk about it," Ethan said, feeling a fire ignite within him. "What if we organize a forum? We could invite community leaders, local schools, and even patients to share their stories. Let's create a platform for dialogue and education." Dr. Malik raised an eyebrow. "That's a bold move, Ethan, but I think it could really work. People need to hear these stories firsthand." As the conversation evolved, Ethan felt a sense of excitement. They began brainstorming ideas, planning the logistics of the forum, and discussing potential dates. Each idea sparked a wave of enthusiasm, the energy palpable as they worked together to craft a vision. This wasn't just a fleeting moment of inspiration, it was the birth of a movement. By the end of lunch, they had a tentative plan in place. Ethan would lead the initiative, rallying support from both medical staff and community members. He felt a sense of responsibility settling on his shoulders, a weight that felt both heavy and invigorating. This was his chance to use his voice, to push back against the systemic inequities that had hindered not just his path, but the paths of countless others. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity as Ethan juggled his surgical schedule and the burgeoning plans for the forum. He reached out to local organizations focused on health equity and began forming partnerships. Each conversation sparked hope, and soon he was connecting with leaders in the community, advocates who had dedicated their lives to fighting for healthcare access and justice. Ethan arranged a meeting with Mrs. Williams, the head of a local nonprofit that focused on healthcare for underserved populations. The organization had a solid reputation for connecting marginalized communities with necessary medical resources. As they sat in her office, surrounded by photos of community events and initiatives, Ethan shared his vision. "I want to create a forum where we can bring awareness to the disparities in healthcare," he said, his voice steady. "We need to highlight the stories of those affected and rally support for change." Mrs. Williams listened intently, her expression thoughtful. "This is an important endeavor, Ethan. Stories are powerful tools for change. They humanize statistics and make the issues real. We can collaborate on this and ensure that we reach a wide audience." As they discussed potential speakers and topics, Ethan's excitement grew. He envisioned a gathering that would bring together healthcare professionals, patients, students, and community advocates, a place where voices could be heard and ideas exchanged. In the following weeks, the forum began to take shape. Ethan worked tirelessly, reaching out to local schools, universities, and organizations to secure participation. He wanted to ensure that the event was inclusive, representing a diverse array of voices. He recruited fellow doctors, nurses, and social workers to serve on panels, sharing their experiences and insights. As the date approached, Ethan couldn't shake the nerves that crept in. What if no one showed up? What if they failed to make an impact? He confided in Jade during one of their late-night phone calls. "I want this to be meaningful, but I'm terrified that it will fall flat." Jade's voice was reassuring. "Ethan, change doesn't happen overnight. You're planting seeds. Even if only a handful of people show up, those seeds can grow into something beautiful. Just remember, your story matters, and so do the stories of others." On the day of the forum, Ethan arrived early, his heart racing with anticipation. The auditorium at Charity Hospital was buzzing with energy as attendees filtered in, their conversations a symphony of hope and determination. He watched as people exchanged ideas and shared laughter, the atmosphere electric with possibility. As the event began, Ethan took a deep breath, stepping up to the podium. He felt the weight of every gaze upon him, the air thick with expectation. He began to speak, his voice steady but filled with passion. He shared his own story, his experiences of being a black surgeon navigating a predominantly white field, the struggles and triumphs that shaped his journey. The audience listened intently, captivated by his authenticity. He encouraged them to share their stories, inviting others to step forward and speak about their experiences with healthcare disparities. One by one, people shared their narratives, heart-wrenching accounts of battles with illness, systemic neglect, and the struggle for equitable care. Each story added layers to the collective narrative, weaving a tapestry of resilience and hope. As the forum progressed, Ethan watched the crowd transform. What began as a gathering of individuals became a community united in purpose. Participants exchanged contact information, eager to continue the conversations beyond the auditorium walls. Ideas flowed freely, and together, they'd brainstormed actionable steps to promote health equity in their city. By the time the forum concluded, Ethan was overwhelmed with gratitude and inspiration. The energy in the room was palpable, a sense of camaraderie that transcended the barriers they faced. The seeds of change had been sown, and they were ready to take root. As he left the auditorium, Ethan felt a renewed sense of purpose. This was just the beginning. The conversation sparked that day would ripple through the community, igniting advocacy efforts and fostering a culture of inclusion and empowerment. With his sister's words echoing in his mind, he knew that standing up for what was right meant embracing discomfort, confronting the status quo, and being willing to fight for change, both within himself and for others. The journey ahead would be challenging, but with the support of his community, he felt ready to face it head-on. And as the sun began to set over New Orleans, casting a warm glow over the city, Ethan couldn't help but feel hopeful for the future, a future where every voice would be heard, and every individual would have a seat at the table. Building bridges. In the weeks following the forum, the momentum that Dr. Ethan Carter had ignited in the New Orleans community began to transform into tangible action. The event had been a resounding success, far surpassing Ethan's initial expectations. People were not just talking about change, they were actively seeking ways to implement it. Ethan found himself at the forefront of this movement, receiving calls from local organizations, schools, and even hospitals interested in joining the cause. Every day brought new opportunities to collaborate and educate, and as he embraced this role, he felt a deep sense of purpose flooding his life. He was no longer just a surgeon focused solely on individual patients. He was a catalyst for systemic change. The community outreach team at Charity Hospital was eager to expand its initiatives aimed at underserved populations. Inspired by the forum's success, they approached Ethan to spearhead a new project, mobile health clinics. The goal was simple yet profound: to take health care directly to communities that faced barriers in accessing medical services. "I think this is a brilliant idea," Ethan said during a strategy meeting with the outreach team. "Many people in our community have transportation issues or are hesitant to seek help because of negative past experiences with healthcare providers. Bringing services to them will break down those barriers." As they brainstormed logistics, Ethan's mind raced with possibilities. The mobile clinics could provide a range of services: routine checkups, vaccinations, health education, and even mental health support. He envisioned a colorful bus, brightly painted and adorned with images reflecting the cultural richness of New Orleans. It would not just be a vehicle for medical care, but a beacon of hope, a reminder that healthcare could be accessible and compassionate. Weeks turned into months as the project took shape. Ethan worked tirelessly to secure funding, collaborating with local businesses, philanthropists, and community leaders who shared his vision. He reached out to medical schools for student volunteers and organized training sessions for both new and experienced staff. Together, they crafted a curriculum focused on cultural competency, ensuring that every provider understood the unique needs and challenges faced by the communities they would serve. As the launch date approached, Ethan felt a mixture of excitement and trepidation. Would the community embrace the mobile clinics? Would they trust the healthcare providers coming to their neighborhoods? To ease any concerns, Ethan decided to host a series of community meetings in different neighborhoods, inviting residents to learn more about the initiative. The first meeting took place in the heart of the Treem neighborhood, a historic district known for its rich African American culture and musical heritage. As Ethan set up for the meeting, he couldn't help but feel a sense of nostalgia wash over him. The air was filled with the sounds of jazz music drifting from nearby venues, a reminder of the vibrant community he had grown to love. When the meeting began, he stood before a small group of residents gathered in the local community center. The atmosphere was casual yet charged with anticipation. "Thank you all for coming today," he began, his heart racing. "I'm Dr. Ethan Carter, and I'm here to introduce a new initiative that aims to bring health care directly to you and your families." He explained the vision behind the mobile health clinics, detailing the services they would provide and emphasizing their commitment to building trust within the community. He wanted them to feel heard, valued, and empowered in their healthcare decisions. As he spoke, he noticed varying expressions among the audience. Some were intrigued, others skeptical. One resident, a middle-aged woman with a warm smile and a skeptical brow, raised her hand. "How do we know this isn't just another program that will come and go? We've seen too many of those." Ethan nodded, acknowledging her concerns. "I completely understand. That's why we want to build a relationship with this community. We are not here just to offer services. We want to hear your needs, your stories, and your feedback. We want this to be a long-term partnership." A murmur of agreement rippled through the audience, but he could still sense their hesitation. "If you're skeptical," he continued, "I invite you to join us when we start our services. Meet our team, see what we do, and if you're not satisfied, tell us. We want to improve." By the end of the meeting, Ethan felt a shift in the room. The initial skepticism transformed into cautious optimism. Residents approached him afterward, asking questions and expressing interest in volunteering. "I have a background in nursing," one young woman said, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. "I'd love to help." Over the following weeks, Ethan conducted more community meetings across various neighborhoods, each one more successful than the last. With every conversation, he felt the community's engagement deepen. He was no longer a stranger in a lab coat. He was becoming a familiar face, a trusted ally. As the launch day of the mobile clinic approached, Ethan felt a swell of pride. The bus had been painted with vibrant colors, adorned with images of diverse families, musicians, and symbols representing the rich culture of New Orleans. It felt like a tribute to the very community it aimed to serve. Finally, the day arrived. The morning sun shone brightly, casting a golden hue over the city. Ethan stood outside the bus, his heart racing as the inaugural clinic day was about to begin. Residents began to gather, curiosity evident in their eyes. Some brought their children, others came alone, but all carried an air of anticipation. As people boarded the mobile clinic, Ethan welcomed each of them personally. "Welcome. I'm so glad you're here," he said, his smile genuine and warm. Inside, the clinic was equipped with examination rooms, a waiting area, and even a small space for health education workshops. The first patient was an elderly man named Mr. Johnson, who came with a list of health concerns he had been too afraid to voice in the past. Ethan listened intently, taking notes and asking questions that went beyond the medical symptoms. "Mr. Johnson, I want to ensure we address not just your physical health, but also your emotional well-being. How have you been feeling overall?" Tears welled in the man's eyes as he shared the challenges he faced: loneliness, anxiety, and the struggles of living on a fixed income. In that moment, Ethan realized that healthcare was more than just diagnosing ailments. It was about connecting with people on a human level. They discussed options for support and resources, and Ethan felt the weight of Mr. Johnson's burdens lighten, if only slightly. As the day unfolded, Ethan treated a diverse array of patients. A young mother brought her child for a routine checkup, an anxious teenager sought advice on mental health, and a couple wanted to learn more about managing chronic illnesses. With each interaction, Ethan's heart swelled with gratitude for the opportunity to serve. By the end of the day, the mobile clinic had seen more patients than Ethan had anticipated. Exhausted but exhilarated, he gathered the team outside the bus, the setting sun painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. "We did it, everyone," he exclaimed. "Today was a huge success." The team cheered, their spirits high. They shared stories of their interactions, laughter punctuating the air as they recounted humorous moments and heartfelt connections made throughout the day. In that moment, it felt as if they had all become part of something larger than themselves, a movement fueled by compassion and commitment. As the bus rolled away from the neighborhood, Ethan looked back at the people gathered outside, waving goodbye. He couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The mobile clinic had opened a door to a new chapter in community healthcare, and he was determined to keep it wide open. That evening, as he sat on his porch, sipping a cup of tea, Ethan reflected on the day. He felt a sense of fulfillment that he had rarely experienced in the operating room. The clinic had not only provided medical services, it had fostered a sense of community, trust, and hope. Suddenly, his phone buzzed with a message from Jade. "How did it go? Can't wait to hear all about it." Ethan smiled, typing back quickly. "It was incredible. So many people showed up, and we made real connections. This is only the beginning." Jade's reply came almost instantly. "I knew you could do it. You're making a difference, Ethan. I'm proud of you." Those words resonated deeply within him. He wasn't just a surgeon anymore. He was a bridge between the medical community and the residents of New Orleans. As he gazed at the vibrant city around him, he knew he had found his true calling, a calling that would push him to confront the inequities that existed not just in healthcare, but in society as a whole. With renewed energy and determination, Ethan began to plan the next steps. He would expand the mobile clinic's reach, introduce specialized services, and most importantly, create a sustainable model that would last. This journey wasn't without its challenges, but he felt ready to face them head-on, armed with the knowledge that he was not alone. The following days were filled with meetings, planning sessions, and community outreach. He worked closely with local schools to integrate health education into their curricula, ensuring that the next generation understood the importance of self-advocacy and health literacy. He envisioned workshops on nutrition, mental health awareness, and even basic first aid, aiming to empower families with the knowledge they needed to thrive. As the mobile clinic rolled into new neighborhoods, Ethan's connection with the community deepened. They weren't just patients. They were friends, partners, and allies in a shared mission for better health. Through his efforts, he witnessed the emergence of local leaders, individuals who stepped up to advocate for their own communities, ready to champion health equity. The impact of the mobile clinic extended beyond just healthcare. Ethan saw families gathering for the educational sessions, engaging in discussions that sparked ideas for improving their neighborhoods. Together, they began to address not only health disparities, but also the socioeconomic factors contributing to them. This collective consciousness was powerful, igniting a grassroots movement that echoed the spirit of resilience deeply rooted in New Orleans. Ethan felt invigorated by the transformations happening around him. The challenges he faced, financial constraints, logistical hurdles, and the occasional resistance from those who preferred the status quo, only fueled his determination. Every setback became a lesson, every obstacle an opportunity for growth. His relationship with his sister Jade remained a source of strength and inspiration. They often met for coffee or dinner, where they would brainstorm new ideas and strategies. "You're not just changing lives, Ethan. You're changing the narrative," she said one evening, her eyes shining with admiration. "You're proving that healthcare can be compassionate and accessible." With each passing day, Ethan embraced the multifaceted role he had taken on: a doctor, a community leader, and an advocate for systemic change. He became a familiar face in the neighborhoods he served, often stopping to chat with residents, sharing stories, and listening to their concerns. The bonds he formed reinforced his belief that change was possible, and that it began with understanding and compassion. As the mobile clinic continued its journey, Ethan knew that this was just the beginning. The seeds of change had been sown, and he was committed to nurturing them, fostering a culture of health and empowerment. Each step forward was a testament to the strength of community, the power of resilience, and the unwavering belief that everyone deserves access to quality healthcare. And with that belief guiding him, Ethan felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing that he was not just a part of the solution, but a key player in transforming the healthcare landscape for generations to come. Confronting resistance. As the mobile clinic flourished, the ripples of change began to spread beyond the confines of the neighborhoods it served. Dr. Ethan Carter was no longer just a surgeon. He was now a community leader, an advocate, and a voice for those who felt unheard. Yet with success came challenges, and not everyone was enthusiastic about the transformation taking place in New Orleans. One afternoon, while reviewing the clinic's progress at the hospital, Ethan received an unexpected call from the hospital administration. "Dr. Carter, we need to discuss the mobile clinic project," said Mr. Thompson, the hospital's chief administrator. "Can you come to my office?" Ethan's heart raced. He sensed an undercurrent of tension in Mr. Thompson's voice. "Of course, I'll be there shortly." As he walked through the sterile halls of the hospital, he reflected on the strides they had made in outreach and community engagement. Had something gone wrong? Entering Mr. Thompson's office, Ethan was met with a serious expression. "Thank you for coming, Dr. Carter. We need to talk about the mobile clinic initiative. There have been some complaints from staff and local physicians." Ethan frowned, crossing his arms. "Complaints? About what?" "Some believe that the mobile clinic is undermining their practices. They feel that we're bypassing traditional healthcare pathways and eroding trust within the established medical community," Mr. Thompson explained. Ethan felt a mixture of frustration and disbelief. But that's not the goal at all. The mobile clinic is designed to complement existing healthcare services, not replace them. We're reaching patients who wouldn't otherwise seek care due to transportation barriers or fear of judgment. True, but their concerns are rooted in a fear of losing patients and revenue, Mr. Thompson continued. Some are worried that if you're successful, it could set a precedent for other departments to follow suit, creating a potential financial strain on the hospital. Ethan took a deep breath, processing the implications. "I understand their concerns, but we're addressing a pressing need in our community. If we don't meet these needs, we're failing our mission as healthcare providers. While I appreciate your passion, I must remind you that the hospital has to balance its resources and maintain its relationships with local practitioners," Mr. Thompson replied, his tone measured but firm. "I'd recommend organizing a meeting with those concerned. You'll need to address their fears and demonstrate how the mobile clinic can integrate into the existing framework. Ethan nodded, knowing that he had to advocate for his vision, but the weight of the situation settled heavily on his shoulders. He left the meeting with a mix of determination and apprehension, fully aware that navigating the complex dynamics of the healthcare system would require patience and diplomacy. Over the next few days, Ethan reached out to the local physicians who had expressed concerns. He scheduled a meeting at the hospital, inviting them to discuss the mobile clinic's role and its impact on community health. Ethan wanted to foster collaboration, emphasizing that their shared goal was to improve health outcomes for the very patients they served. On the day of the meeting, Ethan prepared thoroughly. He gathered data on the clinic's patient demographics, success stories, and potential partnerships that would enhance the overall healthcare ecosystem. As he walked into the conference room, he was met with a sea of skeptical faces, each physician representing different specialties and perspectives. "Thank you all for coming," Ethan began, his voice steady despite the tension in the room. "I know there are concerns regarding the mobile clinic, and I want to take this opportunity to address those concerns openly." Dr. Green, an obstetrician known for her forthrightness, interjected. "Ethan, we understand the intention behind the mobile clinic, but what we see is a potential threat to our practices. We've built relationships with our patients over years. If they start going to the mobile clinic, what does that mean for us?" Ethan nodded, acknowledging her perspective. "I completely understand. However, the data shows that many of the patients we serve in the mobile clinic have not sought care in traditional settings. We're reaching people who have been marginalized by the healthcare system." He presented statistics showcasing how the mobile clinic had already facilitated preventative care for over 1,000 residents, highlighting the importance of addressing health disparities in underserved communities. He shared patient testimonials that emphasized how the clinic had transformed lives, providing not just medical care, but also education and resources. As he spoke, he saw some of the skepticism begin to soften, but others remained resistant. Dr. Patel, a well-respected cardiologist, raised a hand. "You're presenting great numbers, Ethan, but I still worry about the lack of continuity in care. Patients need ongoing relationships with their healthcare providers. How do you plan to ensure that?" Ethan appreciated the question and had anticipated it. "We're working on creating a referral system that connects patients from the mobile clinic to local physicians for follow-up care. We want to ensure that we're working in tandem, not in opposition. The goal is to build a bridge between our services." The conversation continued, with Ethan emphasizing collaboration over competition. He proposed forming a coalition of local providers, where the mobile clinic could serve as an entry point for patients, funneling them into established care networks. This way, they could work together to ensure that every patient received comprehensive care tailored to their needs. Despite the initial resistance, the meeting concluded with a sense of cautious optimism. Some physicians expressed interest in collaborating, and the idea of forming a coalition began to take shape. Ethan left the meeting feeling hopeful that he had laid the groundwork for a stronger, more unified approach to healthcare in New Orleans. However, not everyone was convinced. As weeks passed, Ethan noticed subtle tensions emerging within the hospital. Some staff members began to voice their frustrations openly, questioning why resources were allocated to the mobile clinic when there were ongoing needs within the hospital itself. Rumors swirled that the administration was favoring the new initiative over established practices. Ethan was determined to address these issues head-on. He organized another meeting, this time with hospital staff, to discuss their concerns and provide a platform for open dialogue. "I know there's a lot of uncertainty surrounding the mobile clinic," he began, addressing the gathered staff. "I want to hear your thoughts and make sure we're all on the same page." One nurse, clearly frustrated, spoke up. "Ethan, we're overwhelmed with patients in the hospital. It feels like the mobile clinic is pulling attention and resources away from us. How can we provide quality care here if we're also expected to support this new project?" Ethan understood her frustrations. "I completely recognize that we need to balance our responsibilities. The mobile clinic isn't meant to detract from the hospital. It's an extension of our commitment to care. We're trying to reach patients who otherwise might not come to us at all, which in turn can alleviate some of the pressure on our emergency services. He encouraged a collaborative mindset, urging the staff to see the mobile clinic as an ally rather than a rival. The discussions were heated but necessary, fostering an environment where concerns could be voiced and addressed. By the end of the meeting, Ethan sensed a shift. People began to share their experiences and offer suggestions for improvement, and he felt a renewed sense of unity within the team. The following weeks saw Ethan actively working to bridge gaps between the mobile clinic and the hospital. He organized joint training sessions for staff from both entities, focusing on topics such as cultural competence, patient communication, and teamwork. Slowly, he began to see a transformation in attitudes, as nurses and doctors who once felt threatened by the clinic began to appreciate its mission. To further solidify the connection between the two entities, Ethan initiated a program where mobile clinic staff would shadow hospital staff, gaining insights into patient care and hospital operations. This hands-on experience helped dispel misconceptions and fostered a sense of camaraderie that had previously been lacking. One afternoon, as Ethan was wrapping up a shift, he received a call from Dr. Green. "Ethan, I wanted to apologize for my earlier skepticism. I see now how the mobile clinic can be an asset. I'd like to collaborate on a prenatal program for the mothers we serve." Ethan's heart swelled with pride. "That's fantastic, Dr. Green. Together, we can make a real difference for these families." Their conversation blossomed into a collaborative project that would focus on maternal and infant health, further solidifying the bond between the mobile clinic and the hospital. As he reflected on the past few months, Ethan felt a sense of accomplishment. The resistance he faced had ultimately strengthened his resolve and highlighted the importance of collaboration. He understood that change was rarely straightforward, but each challenge presented an opportunity for growth. The mobile clinic became a symbol of hope and resilience, embodying the spirit of New Orleans. Patients shared stories of how their lives had improved. Access to preventative care had led to early interventions and better health outcomes. Families began to trust the healthcare system, no longer viewing it as an intimidating maze, but rather as a network of support. The coalition of local providers also began to take shape, with monthly meetings to discuss health trends, share resources, and collaborate on outreach efforts. Together, they tackled larger issues, such as transportation barriers, food deserts, and mental health access, working to create a holistic approach to community health. But even amidst this progress, Ethan remained vigilant. He knew that systemic issues wouldn't be solved overnight, and there would always be resistance to change. However, he was more committed than ever to continue pushing for equity and access, armed with the knowledge that he had a network of allies ready to join him in the fight. One evening, while attending a community event, Ethan felt the palpable energy in the room. Residents were coming together, sharing their experiences and forming connections. It was clear that the mobile clinic had done more than provide health care. It had fostered a sense of community, bringing people together in the spirit of collaboration. As he spoke to attendees, a young mother approached him, her eyes shining with gratitude. "Dr. Carter, thank you for the mobile clinic. It's made a huge difference for my family. We were afraid to seek help, but now we feel like we have someone in our corner." In that moment, Ethan realized the true impact of his work. This wasn't just about healthcare. It was about building bridges, fostering understanding, and empowering individuals to take charge of their health. The mobile clinic had become a catalyst for change, not only in healthcare access, but in the very fabric of the community. As the evening drew to a close, Ethan stood outside the venue, the sounds of laughter and conversation filling the air. He gazed up at the stars twinkling above New Orleans, a reminder of the possibilities that lay ahead. With renewed determination, he knew he was ready to face whatever challenges awaited him on the journey for health equity, knowing that he wasn't alone in this fight. Together, they would continue to build bridges, dismantle barriers, and create a healthier, more inclusive future for all. A storm brews. As the months rolled on, the mobile clinic continued to flourish, embedding itself deeper into the fabric of New Orleans. The community's response was overwhelmingly positive, with families expressing gratitude for the services provided and the personal connections made. Dr. Ethan Carter had successfully created a bridge between the medical community and the neighborhoods they served, yet the undercurrents of resistance persisted. Ethan's evenings were often filled with meetings, community outreach events, and patient consultations. However, he was starting to feel the strain of the workload. The energy that once fueled his passion was beginning to wane under the relentless pressure. He knew that maintaining momentum was essential, yet the emotional toll was mounting. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day at the mobile clinic, Ethan returned home and slumped into his couch. He opened his laptop to check emails, hoping to catch up on correspondence before turning in. Scanning through messages, he stumbled upon an invitation from a local news station to discuss the mobile clinic's impact on community health. At first, he hesitated. Public speaking, while rewarding, also brought anxiety. The thought of being in front of cameras made his heart race, and doubt crept in. What if he didn't articulate the vision clearly? What if he faced tough questions from the media? But then he remembered the families who had benefited from the clinic, and that drove him to accept the invitation. If he could amplify their voices, it was worth the discomfort. The following week, Ethan prepared for the segment. He gathered statistics on the clinic's successes, patient testimonials, and stories that highlighted the importance of accessible healthcare. As the day approached, his excitement began to overshadow his anxiety. He envisioned the potential impact of the segment. If he could inspire others to support similar initiatives, it would be a step forward for health equity. On the day of the interview, he arrived at the studio early, his heart pounding as he walked through the brightly lit halls. The producer greeted him, guiding him to the set. "You're going to do great," she reassured him as they adjusted the microphone on his lapel. As the cameras rolled, Ethan spoke passionately about the mobile clinic, sharing stories of patients whose lives had been transformed by the services offered. He spoke of the importance of breaking down barriers and fostering trust within the community. The segment aired that evening, and Ethan felt a sense of pride as he watched the responses roll in. Social media buzzed with support, and community members expressed their gratitude for the clinic's existence. But not all responses were positive. The following day, as Ethan prepared for another shift, he received an email that made his stomach drop. It was from the hospital administration, addressing concerns raised by some local physicians who were now publicly questioning the mobile clinic's legitimacy. They argued that it was an unnecessary duplication of services and accused Ethan of overstepping his role as a surgeon. Ethan's heart raced as he read through the email. It was clear that the resistance he had sensed earlier was growing into a storm. His phone buzzed with notifications, and he realized that local news outlets had picked up the dissenting voices. The narrative was shifting. What had once been a community-driven initiative was now being framed as a disruptive force within the healthcare landscape. Feeling a mix of anger and disappointment, Ethan knew he had to confront this head-on. He couldn't let the voices of dissent overshadow the achievements of the clinic or the needs of the community. That afternoon, he called a meeting with the hospital's administration, inviting key stakeholders, including the critical physicians who had expressed concerns. The meeting was tense from the outset. As Ethan entered the conference room, he was met with a mixture of skepticism and hostility. Dr. Patel, the cardiologist, spoke first. "Ethan, while we appreciate your enthusiasm, your recent media appearances have raised serious concerns about the clinic's effectiveness and your motives." Ethan took a deep breath, steeling himself for the confrontation. "I understand that there are concerns, but I believe we need to focus on the facts. The mobile clinic has provided care to thousands of residents who previously lacked access. This is about serving our community, not undermining anyone's practice." Dr. Green interjected, her tone sharp. "But how can you claim to address systemic issues when you're operating outside of established protocols? We fear that patients might receive inadequate care without proper follow-up." Ethan felt his resolve strengthen. I respect that you're worried about continuity of care. That's why we've established referral systems with local physicians for follow-up visits. We're here to supplement, not replace. We need to work together, not against each other. The room erupted into a heated debate, with voices overlapping as each physician voiced their concerns. Ethan listened intently, but it was clear that mistrust had taken root. Frustration bubbled inside him. How could he convey the importance of this initiative when so many were entrenched in their perspectives? After the meeting, he found himself in the hospital's quiet hallway, reflecting on the confrontation. It was becoming increasingly clear that the battle ahead was not just about the clinic. It was about changing mindsets deeply ingrained in the medical community. He needed a strategy, one that would not only address the immediate concerns, but also foster collaboration and open dialogue. That night, Ethan called Jade, seeking her perspective. "I'm feeling overwhelmed," he admitted. "I thought we were making progress, but now it feels like we're back at square one. The resistance is stronger than I anticipated." "Change is never easy, Ethan," she replied, her voice steady and reassuring. "You've already accomplished so much, but to shift the culture within the medical community, you'll need to be strategic. Host forums where everyone can voice their concerns and facilitate conversations that promote understanding." Inspired by Jade's advice, Ethan began to formulate a plan. He reached out to local healthcare organizations to organize a series of workshops aimed at promoting collaboration between the mobile clinic and local physicians. These workshops would provide a platform for open dialogue, allowing healthcare providers to discuss their experiences, challenges, and hopes for the future of healthcare in New Orleans. As the workshops began, Ethan focused on creating a safe space for discussion. He invited community leaders, healthcare providers, and patients to share their stories, emphasizing the importance of listening to diverse perspectives. He believed that by building empathy and understanding, he could break down the walls of resistance. During one workshop, a local physician shared a poignant story about a patient who had slipped through the cracks of the healthcare system. "I didn't realize how many people were struggling to access care until I met her. She was afraid to come to the hospital because of past experiences. That's why the mobile clinic is so vital," he said, his voice trembling with emotion. Ethan seized the moment. "This is what we need to understand," he said, addressing the room. "It's not about competition. It's about filling in the gaps. We're all part of the same system, and if we can work together, we can ensure that no one is left behind." As the workshops continued, Ethan noticed a shift in attitudes. Physicians who had been skeptical began to express interest in collaborating. They shared ideas for joint initiatives, and discussions turned toward finding solutions rather than placing blame. Slowly, a sense of camaraderie emerged. One evening, after a particularly productive workshop, Dr. Green approached Ethan. "I've been thinking about what you said, about working together. I'd like to propose a community health fair where we can combine resources and services. It could be a great way to show our commitment to the community." Ethan's heart soared. "That's an incredible idea. We can invite families to receive screenings, educational resources, and wellness information all in one place. Let's work together to make it happen." The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity as Ethan and Dr. Green organized the community health fair. They collaborated with local organizations, engaged volunteers, and spread the word through community outreach. The excitement was palpable as the date approached, and Ethan felt hopeful that this event could symbolize a new era of collaboration in healthcare. Finally, the day of the community health fair arrived. Ethan arrived early to set up, his heart racing with anticipation. The venue was buzzing with activity as booths were arranged, informational materials displayed, and volunteers checked in. Colorful banners hung from the walls, and the aroma of food from local vendors filled the air. As families began to arrive, Ethan was overwhelmed by the sense of community. Children laughed and played, while parents gathered information on health resources. The energy was infectious, and Ethan felt a renewed sense of purpose as he greeted attendees. Throughout the day, He witnessed the power of collaboration firsthand. Local physicians provided free health screenings, nurses offered educational workshops, and community leaders facilitated discussions on health equity. The atmosphere was filled with laughter, learning, and a shared commitment to improving community health. As Ethan moved through the crowd, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. This was what he had envisioned: healthcare providers and community members coming together to create a brighter future. The event was not just a celebration of health, it was a testament to the power of unity and collaboration. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the fair, Ethan stood on stage to address the crowd. "Thank you all for coming today," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "This fair is more than just an event. It's a symbol of what we can achieve when we work together. We have the power to change lives, to build bridges, and to create a healthier future for all." The crowd erupted in applause, and in that moment, Ethan knew they were on the precipice of something greater. The storm of resistance had not vanished, but it was beginning to dissipate under the light of collaboration and understanding. They were ready to face the challenges ahead, armed with the knowledge that change was possible. Together, with renewed determination, Ethan looked toward the future, ready to embrace whatever challenges lay ahead. He was committed to ensuring that the voices of the community continued to be heard, that access to health care remained a priority, and that they would never stop fighting for health equity. In the heart of New Orleans, a movement was taking shape, one fueled by passion, compassion, and the unyielding belief that everyone deserves quality health care. And as Ethan looked out at the faces of those he served, he felt a sense of hope wash over him. Hope for a future where health was not a privilege, but a right for all. A legacy of change. As the days turned into weeks following the successful community health fair, Dr. Ethan Carter found himself at a crossroads. The fair had been a watershed moment, not only for the mobile clinic initiative, but for the entire healthcare landscape in New Orleans. The collaborative spirit fostered through that event resonated throughout the community, igniting a passion for health equity that Ethan had long envisioned. Yet, as the initial excitement waned, the reality of sustaining momentum set in. In the weeks that followed, Ethan realized that while the health fair was a significant achievement, it was merely the beginning of a much larger journey. He spent evenings poring over feedback from attendees and participants, eager to understand what had worked and what could be improved. The community's enthusiasm was evident, but he knew that maintaining their engagement would require ongoing effort and innovation. One day, as he sat in his office at Charity Hospital, he received an unexpected visit from Mrs. Williams, the head of the nonprofit organization focused on healthcare access. She had been a staunch supporter of the mobile clinic since its inception, and her presence brought an air of urgency. "Ethan," she began, her tone serious, "I've been following the success of the mobile clinic, but we need to talk about the future. We can't let this momentum fade." Ethan leaned forward, intrigued. "What do you have in mind?" "We need to establish a formal partnership between the mobile clinic and community organizations to create a more sustainable model," she explained. "I propose we form a coalition that not only focuses on healthcare access, but also tackles the social determinants of health, things like education, housing, and employment." Ethan's mind raced with possibilities. "That's a brilliant idea. If we can tackle the root causes of health disparities, we'll create lasting change. But how do we get started?" Mrs. Williams smiled, her eyes sparkling with determination. "We can hold a series of strategic planning meetings with community leaders, stakeholders, and residents. Let's identify key areas where we can collaborate, pooling our resources to address these critical issues." Ethan agreed, recognizing that this coalition could be the key to creating a holistic approach to health in New Orleans. They began reaching out to various organizations, schools, and community leaders, emphasizing the importance of collaboration in addressing health disparities. As they organized the initial meetings, Ethan felt a renewed sense of purpose. The vision of a coalition dedicated to improving not just health but the overall quality of life for residents began to take shape. Each meeting was filled with passionate discussions about strategies, ideas, and potential collaborations, as leaders from different sectors shared their insights and experiences. One evening, they hosted a community forum to present their vision for the coalition. The atmosphere was electric as residents gathered to discuss their hopes and concerns. Ethan stood before the crowd, his heart pounding with anticipation. "Thank you all for coming tonight. We've accomplished so much together already, but now we have an opportunity to create a coalition that addresses the broader challenges our community faces." As he spoke, Ethan highlighted the importance of recognizing that health doesn't exist in a vacuum. Access to health care is vital, but it's intertwined with factors like education, economic stability, and social support. By working together, we can tackle these issues head-on and create a healthier, more resilient community. The audience was engaged, nodding in agreement as residents began to voice their experiences. A young woman stood up, sharing her story of struggling to access mental health services while juggling the demands of school and work. "I want to help others who feel lost in the system," she said passionately. "We need a support network that understands our challenges." As the forum continued, it became clear that the community was ready to take action. Ideas flowed freely, and individuals expressed their willingness to volunteer and participate in the coalition. By the end of the evening, Ethan felt a sense of hope and determination. Together, they were crafting a vision for a healthier, more equitable future. In the following months, the coalition began to take shape. They launched initiatives targeting various social determinants of health, from nutrition education programs in local schools to job training workshops for unemployed residents. Each project was designed to empower individuals, provide resources, and ultimately improve health outcomes. Ethan was particularly passionate about addressing food insecurity, a pressing issue in many neighborhoods. He partnered with local farmers markets and community gardens to establish programs that would provide fresh produce to families in need. The coalition organized cooking classes to educate residents about nutrition and healthy meal preparation, reinforcing the importance of making informed dietary choices. As the coalition's work expanded, Ethan found himself increasingly involved in advocacy efforts. He began attending city council meetings, speaking out about the urgent need for policy changes that would support healthcare access and social equity. With every word, he felt the weight of responsibility, but also the thrill of knowing he was making a difference. One evening, during a council meeting, Ethan presented the coalition's findings on health disparities in New Orleans. He spoke passionately about the need for systemic change, citing data that illustrated the stark contrast in health outcomes across different neighborhoods. If we truly want to create a healthier city, we must address the root causes of these disparities. We need policies that promote equitable access to health care, education, and employment, he urged. After his presentation, a council member approached him, expressing interest in collaborating on initiatives aimed at improving healthcare access. "Your work is impressive, Dr. Carter. I'd like to help you elevate these issues within the council," she said, her tone earnest. Ethan felt a surge of hope. "Thank you. We need allies who understand the importance of this work. Together, we can advocate for meaningful policy changes that benefit our community." As the coalition continued to grow, so did Ethan's network of supporters. Local businesses began to contribute resources, schools offered facilities for meetings and workshops, and residents volunteered their time and talents. The collective efforts reinforced the notion that real change was possible when people came together with a common purpose. Yet, amid the success, Ethan was aware of the challenges that lay ahead. Funding for initiatives remained a constant concern, and sustaining the coalition's momentum required ongoing effort. He found himself navigating the complexities of grant applications, fundraising events, and community engagement, all while managing his responsibilities at the hospital. One evening, as he prepared to leave the hospital after a long shift, he received a message from Jade. "Ethan, I just read about the coalition's initiatives in the paper. You're making waves." Ethan smiled at her enthusiasm, but felt the weight of the ongoing challenges. "Thanks, Jade, but we have a long way to go. "I'm still trying to secure funding for our programs." Her reply was immediate. "You've done so much already. Remember, it's about progress, not perfection. You're creating a legacy." Her words resonated deeply. He had dedicated himself to this cause, not just for the present, but for future generations. He envisioned a community where healthcare was not just a privilege for the few, but a right for all. As he headed home, Ethan reflected on the journey so far, how far he had come, and how much further there was to go. As spring arrived, the coalition organized a community celebration to showcase their initiatives and gather feedback from residents. They set up booths highlighting various programs, from mental health resources to job training opportunities. The event was designed to be a festival of empowerment, inviting families to engage, learn, and celebrate the progress they had made together. On the day of the celebration, Ethan arrived early, excited to see the community come together. Colorful banners adorned the park, and the sounds of laughter filled the air as families gathered for games, food, and activities. Local musicians played, creating an atmosphere of joy and camaraderie. As he moved through the crowd, Ethan felt an overwhelming sense of pride. Residents approached him, sharing stories of how the coalition's initiatives had impacted their lives. A single mother thanked him for the nutrition classes, expressing how they had changed her family's eating habits for the better. A young man who had completed a job training program spoke about his new employment and how it had transformed his life. Ethan took a moment to absorb the energy around him. This celebration was more than just an event. It was a testament to the resilience and spirit of the community. As he stood on stage to address the crowd, he felt a wave of emotion wash over him. "Thank you all for being here today," he began, his voice steady but filled with passion. "What we've accomplished together is remarkable. But remember, this is just the beginning. Our journey toward health equity is ongoing, and it requires all of us to stay engaged and committed." The crowd erupted into applause, their cheers echoing across the park. In that moment, Ethan realized that they were no longer just individuals struggling against a system. They were a unified force, committed to creating change. As the celebration continued, he wandered through the booths, engaging with families and community members. He overheard conversations about the impact of the coalition's work, and it filled him with hope. He knew that they had created something special, a movement that was about more than just healthcare. It was about community, empowerment, and resilience. That evening, as the sun began to set, Ethan stood on the stage and watched as fireworks illuminated the sky, reflecting the vibrancy of the community below. He felt a deep sense of gratitude for the journey he had embarked on, a journey that had transformed him from a surgeon focused solely on individual patients into a leader dedicated to systemic change. As the fireworks faded, he made a silent promise to himself and to the community. He would continue to fight for health equity, to advocate for those who felt unheard, and to ensure that the legacy of change they were building would endure for generations to come. In the heart of New Orleans, a movement had taken root, and Ethan Carter was proud to be a part of it. The future was bright, filled with promise and possibility, and together they would continue to push forward, armed with the knowledge that true change is not just a dream, but a collective reality waiting to be realized.